Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name is Leanne and today's video is another What's for Dinner. I'm going to be sharing with you a few of our recent dinners, and the first one is a one skillet meal. It's a kielbasa, rice, broccoli, and cheesy type of meal. I'm going to be switching it up a little bit. We're going to use some riced cauliflower and frozen broccoli. I believe the recipe calls for fresh, so I'll also be adjusting some liquids and stuff like that just because of that, but I will show you everything I'm doing, and I will also have the original recipe linked below. So let's get started with the first meal. So to get started, I'm heating up some olive oil in my pan, and then I took one package of kielbasa. I sliced them into like medallions and then into quarters just to make everything more bite-sized, and we are just going to brown that up in this pan. It's already cooked, but I just like to get it a little bit browned, and I apparently already made a mess even though I just started cooking. So once the kielbasa is brown, we're going to remove it, leaving any grease behind. So I use a spatula. You could also use a slotted spoon. And we're just going to set that to the side. And then I'm going to saute an onion. I do add a little bit more oil in there. I think the recipe called for a small diced onion. I think I used like half of a large, so whatever. And then if you have a bell pepper, you can also do that. This meal was not planned ahead of time, plus I'm not a huge pepper fan, so I did not have any peppers. Once the onion is nice and cooked, I'm just going to add in some garlic and just cook for another minute or so, and you can add in some salt and pepper here. I don't think I did, because I don't know, I didn't. Maybe I add it later, not sure. Anyways, I'm just going to add in my riced cauliflower because we're using riced cauliflower instead of rice. So I will have the recipe linked below if you want to see how to do it with the rice. It'll still all be in one skillet, but again, I'm doing it different. And I'm just pulling out the broccoli once it started to thaw a little bit to cut up those huge honkin' pieces into smaller bite-sized pieces. And then I didn't add any liquid because I don't add any liquid when I'm cooking rice cauliflower because I feel like any liquid from it being frozen is enough. So I'm just cooking the rice cauliflower and the broccoli just in the pan. And then once that's pretty close to done, I'm adding, or maybe done I guess, I'm adding in the kielbasa. And then I'm adding in 1 cup of shredded cheese. I've got 2 cups all together. We're going to add in 1 cup now and mix it all together. And then I do go ahead and add the salt at this point. I don't know if I just didn't realize I needed it earlier, or I don't know. And then we're going to add in the rest of the cheese just on top. We're going to put the lid on and let it just melt down. And here it is, all finished. This was really, really good. I love these one skillet meals, and the kielbasa, although in my opinion it's not that good for you, it does have so much flavor, so it's a really, really good ingredient for like one pan meals, like one skillet meals or sheet pan meals. And this dinner was so good. In fact, I'm kind of tempted to make it tonight for dinner. Anyways, this first dinner was really good. Alright guys, so for tonight's dinner we're going to have a London broil, and I am just prepping it ahead of time so I can marinate it. I'll have the recipe linked below. There's a couple switch ups. I'm not putting any black pepper, which is kind of typical for me, and I am using white vinegar instead of balsamic vinegar, which I know is not the same, but that's what I have on hand. And I'm going to use coconut aminos instead of soy sauce, and I'm going to use lemon oil instead of a lemon juice because I don't have any lemon juice on hand. And I'm also going to just eyeball it and not measure. So we've got a 1/4 cup of olive oil, 3 tablespoons of vinegar, 3 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce or the coconut aminos, put a few drops of the lemon oil, 2 teaspoons of Dijon mustard, 2 teaspoons of brown sugar, 4 cloves of garlic, minced. I'm just going to finish out what's in this jar. All right, so it's a few hours later. It's now about dinner time, and I'm gonna do a spaghetti squash with this. So, don't do as I do. Cutting a spaghetti squash isn't the easiest thing, and it's really hard when you have some really garbage knives. I really need to buy yourself some new knives. So yeah, thankfully nobody got hurt, but it wasn't a guarantee with my method. So you're just going to cut the spaghetti squash in half and then scoop out the seeds, and I just put them face down on a cookie sheet. I usually line it and spray it. Sometimes I put a little bit of water on the bottom, not much, like a very little bit. Sometimes I don't. I don't think I did here, but I did later. Anyways, put them face down, pop them in the oven at 400 degrees, and anywhere between 30 minutes and 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the size of your spaghetti squash, because obviously if it's a bigger one, it's gonna take longer. Now we are just heating up in a skillet some oil, and we are going to put our London broil in there. The recipe did say to like pat it dry, so I kind of did a little bit. And we're just going to cook that for just a couple minutes on each side, and then we're gonna put it into a baking dish, an oven dish, and yeah, put it in the oven and cook until the meat is medium rare. Is usually what you do for London broil, so that's what we're doing. I'm gonna take it out and let it rest for a second. There's the spaghetti squash. When it's done, it's extremely hot, and I just flip it over and kind of pull the strands away with a fork. And this time I just made up a butter mixture with some, I think just with garlic, butter and garlic, and just to kind of soak it in there. And yeah, it got a little bit brown there. That's just because I put a little bit of water in and then the little juices, and nothing wrong with it there. And then we're gonna slice up our London broil and serve that alongside the spaghetti squash, and then we'll steam up some green beans. And very simple dinner, but very good. The London broil was very flavorful. I really highly recommend that marinade.
All right, guys, so for tonight's dinner, we're gonna be starting off by cooking a whole chicken in the crock pot. And I just made up a little mixture of seasoning using crushed red pepper flakes, garlic powder, onion powder, paprika, parsley, and salt. So we're gonna get our chicken in the oven. Nope, we're gonna get our chicken in the crock pot and let that go for the next few hours, and then we will come back for dinner. Alright, so I'm using my meat thermometer and my chicken is now done. So we are going to turn this off, and I will turn this off. And I'm going to take this out and let it rest for a little bit. We're actually just going to be using meat from this. I'm going to just be taking it apart and using it for a couple meals this week. So, but there it is. It looks good. It smells good. We're just gonna take this out and we'll come back to it in a little bit. It's only 4:20, so we got a little bit before we have dinner, but chicken part's done. All right, guys, so on to tonight's actual dinner. We are going to be making chicken Divan. So I took that chicken and I took off all of the meat. I put them into two sections, one for tonight's dinner, one for another dinner this week, and I also put all of the bones aside because I'm gonna make some homemade chicken broth with it for the other dinner as well. So we're getting started. I've got some broccoli. Can't quite see it in the shot, but on the stove, steaming. The recipe suggests fresh broccoli, but I don't have any. So I'm just steaming it. I'm gonna make sure I don't overcook it because it will cook some more in the oven. Actually, I'm gonna check on it really quick. All right, we're calling the broccoli done, and I drained it really well. Okay, so right now we are going to mix up in this bowl. Oh, what are we mixing up? We're gonna do 1 cup of shredded cheddar cheese, 1/2 cup of milk, 2/3 cup of sour cream, and then the recipe calls for a 10.5 ounce can of cream of mushroom soup, or you can use chicken soup. I have some homemade cream of chicken that I had made a while back, And I believe 10.5 ounces. This is about 1 1/4 cup. So I'm gonna pull that out of here. This was in the freezer. And then I'll try to use whatever's left later this week so I don't have to refreeze it. And then we're going to also add in a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, onion powder. The recipe calls for dried mustard. I don't have that, so I'm gonna use just mustard. And pepper if you so choose. I don't like to use pepper. And then a 1/4 teaspoon of seasoning salt. We're gonna mix that all up here. I'll have the recipe linked for you below in case you missed something there. All right, now we're going to add in our chicken. I believe it's supposed to be 3 cups, and I did, you know, that or a little more. And then we're gonna also add in our broccoli. I'm gonna chop mine up a little bit more because the frozen broccoli I get comes in pretty big pieces, so I'm gonna chop that up as I add that in. The recipe said to do this in a medium bowl. I feel like a large bowl would have been smarter after adding all of this stuff. All right, that's gonna be good enough. I've got a large baking, whoa, I almost dropped that. Large baking dish that has been greased. We're gonna top with some more cheese, about 1/2 cup. I think there's a 1.5 cups altogether of cheese in this recipe. Of course, I don't believe that cheese really needs to be measured because you can never have too much. That's my personal opinion. All right, and now we are going to make a topping for this really quick. All right, I've got about 1 tablespoon of melted butter. We're gonna put in 3 tablespoons of breadcrumbs. Just gonna eyeball it. Mix that together and pour this on top, or sprinkle it on top. All right, now this goes in the oven at 400 degrees for 18 to 20 minutes until everything's heated through, the cheese is melted, and we got little crispies on top. All right, so here it is out of the oven. I kind of forgot, we've already served ourselves and I totally forgot to show you it. And then I just also made up some brown rice, which is, I didn't make a ton. So we served it over brown rice. So there it is, we're about to dive in, and I realized I hadn't shown the finished product, but it smells good and it looks good. All right guys, so we are going to make some really basic chicken broth. I've got my, my carcass from a chicken that I cooked in the crock pot yesterday. And you may have seen that in this video. I'm not sure which video I'm going to put this in. And I've got some veggie scraps that I've just been putting in the freezer, just like carrot peels and leafy celery stalks. There's not much in here, so I'm going to add some additional veggies real quick. I've got like a 1/2 an onion or 1/4 of an onion. I just gonna throw that in. I have a couple dinky carrots. I just cut them in half. Throw those in there. I'm just going through my celery from the fridge. It all looks pretty good, but these leafy things you really don't have much use for in recipes, so I'll throw those in. And then a couple stalks that just don't look that good. Let me grab some garlic. I'm just gonna throw in some jarred minced garlic. You don't have to do this. You could just do the chicken carcass and water, or any bones really. But I always like to do veggie scraps, and then I had just a little bit of extra stuff lying around. All right, now I'm just going to fill this with water. My large measuring cup is in the sink, so this is gonna take a little while. So I normally do this on the stove top. I don't normally do it on the crock pot, but I know you can, so that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna do on low, and it's about 11 a.m. I'm gonna let this go all day, probably into tonight. I might even leave it overnight and take care of it tomorrow morning. I'm not sure, but that's what it looks like. And we're gonna have chicken broth for dinner tomorrow. All right, so I let this go for about 24 hours. 10 to 12 is probably enough, but I always feel like the longer, the better. So now I just have to strain this, and then I'll put the broth in the fridge, and I'm gonna use it for dinner tonight, which you're also gonna see. I would say there are lots of ways to do this, but I'm just gonna put it in the bowl I'm going to be storing it in. I've got a mesh strainer, and I've got one of these things. Now, I will also say, a lot of times I freeze this. I won't, because I'm just going to use it tonight. But I'll put it into, I will end up, you still want to cool it. Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. You want to cool it before you freeze it anyway. But today we're just going to be straining it, and then I will use it for dinner later.
I also wanted to just say thank you guys for watching. I'm so glad that you're here. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps me out a ton. And also, please consider hitting that subscribe button before you leave so that you don't miss out on my future video. You also want to hit the notification bell next to it and hit all. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have crazy notifications, but it will notify you when I post a video, and you can always adjust on your phone what those notifications look like. Are they just a push notification, or are they an email? It doesn't have to be a ton, but it will make sure that you actually know when I post a video, because YouTube's a little strange like that.
All done. There's a little bit of stuff in the bottom of the strainer there. This is the bulk of it, so I'll toss that. And here is the chicken broth, bone broth. I don't know. I know there's a difference, and I've read about what the difference is, and I don't remember. Anyways, I'm just gonna let that cool a little bit more before I pop it in the fridge. Put this lid on it, but that is all there is to it. I will measure it later, because I am curious to know how much it made in the crock pot. I usually normally do it in my huge stock pot, but I didn't have a ton of, just had the carcass from one chicken anyway. So, all right, that's it till dinner. All right, guys, so for tonight's dinner, we are going to just do a basic chicken noodle soup. I had tossed around the idea of switching it up and doing a creamy chicken noodle soup, or I don't know, something different, but I decided I'm gonna go with a tried and true recipe. I will have it written out for you in the description box below. And I normally do about 4 large carrots. These aren't super huge, so I'm doing 5. This is the only amount of celery that I had left, so that's what I'm using. And we're gonna get all of this chopped up and get the soup started. All right, we've got all of our veggies chopped. We are going to start by sauteing them in some olive oil. Now, sometimes I will not do the carrots at the same time. I'll just wait till the broth is in there and put the carrots in there, but I want this to cook a little bit quicker. So I just decided we're gonna saute it all together. Once these get going and are pretty close to done, we will throw in a couple heaping tablespoons, probably, or heaping teaspoons maybe, I don't know, of some minced garlic. Probably should turn the light on, maybe. But you can do some fresh garlic if you have that as well. Really just depends on what your preference is, guys, for just about all of this. All right, the veggies are nice and tender, and they will cook some more in the broth, so even if the carrots aren't totally done, we're good. We're gonna add in 6 cups of chicken broth. I'm going to be grabbing what I had made earlier that you saw. So I have lots of chicken broth left over that I will be freezing later, probably. I'm gonna add in 2 cups of water. We're gonna add about a teaspoon of basil, teaspoon of oregano. You can measure it if you feel better about it that way. And salt and pepper to taste. I will leave out the pepper and let my husband pepper his own soup, because I don't really care for black pepper. And I'm just putting in, I don't know, probably about a teaspoon, which is probably not enough. I did not season my chicken broth, except for with what was seasonings might have been left on the carcass, but I will start here. We can always add more later. And then we're gonna add in 2 to 3 cups of cooked chicken. This is the chicken I had, the rest of the chicken I had pulled from the whole chicken that you saw me make earlier in the video. I'm trying to do this without making it splash all over me. Not sure. I think I'm gonna do this with my hands. And I'm just guessing that's about 2 to 3 cups. I don't really know. But I got 2 meals from the chicken. So if it wasn't a super huge bird, it was one of the Never Eddies, I think, from Aldi. So they're not super huge, but chicken noodle soup, which will serve us more than once, plus the chicken Divan, which served us 2 times, 2.5, plus the chicken broth out of that chicken. So pretty good deal. All right, so I have turned up the heat. We're going to bring this to a soft simmer and just let that all heat through. The chicken broth was cold. I had taken it out of the fridge, but it was definitely still cold. We're gonna let that go for 20 to 30 minutes. And then I'm gonna add in 1 can of corn and our egg noodles towards the end, and we'll just let that go long enough for the noodles to cook. You could also add green beans to this and really just adjust the veggies to your preference. I'm thinking about maybe adding green beans. I might. I have to check what I've got in the freezer. Let me get this up to temperature for now, or up to a simmer rather. All right, so while I wait for that soup to simmer for a little bit, I'm gonna show you how I freeze my chicken broth. So I'm grabbing some, freezer bags, quart-sized freezer bags. And I usually do them in 2-cup portions, but you can do, I don't know why I started writing it over here. And I don't know what today is, February 12th. So I have my large measuring cup to hold my bag, and I'm going to roll this down. I want to be careful to not split the sides, but I like to roll it down twice. Actually, no, I'll just do it the one. But you just don't want to get anything on the Ziploc part that might interrupt the seal. So I'm going to put it here. Hang on. And I like to just put it over the spout of the measuring cup to just hold it in place. I'm armed with a paper towel because there will be drippage, I'm sure. I'm going to use a funnel. This is not entirely necessary, but it will help minimize the mess. And of course, you want to make sure this is cold. Like I said, mine already is, but if you just made this, make sure it's chilled before you do this. Try not to make a mess. All right, so far so good. And now I'm gonna carefully fold this back over. Again, I don't wanna split the end there. Get most of the air out, or close it up most of the way, and then we're gonna just get all the air out as best we can. And zip it the rest. And then I'm going to lay them flat on a cookie sheet like this. My soup is coming to a boil. I don't want that. I'm gonna lay them flat like this in the freezer. Then once they're frozen, you can stand them up. I'll take them and usually throw into a larger gallon bag because it's just easier to move stuff around that way. All right, so I got 6 cups and I used 6 cups, I think, so about 12 cups out of a crock pot full. Not bad. I tried to make a flat place for me to, well, it's kind of flat, for me to put them while they freeze, and then we'll move them once they're frozen. And I am going to grab some green beans, that's not very much, to add to my soup, because we like our veggies. All right, so I think I'm gonna do about 2 cups of green beans. Got this can of corn. I did drain that. And then 2 to 3 cups of egg noodles. I did the 3. We're just gonna stir that up, and I'm gonna pop a lid on it and just kind of let that go until the noodles are cooked. I'm gonna add in a little bit more salt too. Alright guys, and this is dinner for tonight, and that's going to be it for today's video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe before you leave so you don't miss out on my future videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one.